The Nile River, a symbol of lifeblood for civilizations, now finds itself at the heart of a modern-day geopolitical struggle. The source of this tension? The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, a monumental project underway in Ethiopia. This ambitious endeavor, set to be Africa's largest hydroelectric dam, has ignited a fierce debate over the Nile's precious water resources. For Ethiopia, the GERD represents a beacon of progress, promising energy, independence and economic transformation. However, downstream nations, particularly Egypt, view the dam with growing apprehension. Their concern stems from a deep-rooted reliance on the Nile's flow, a lifeline for their populations and economies. The crux of the dispute lies in the control and distribution of the Nile's water. Egypt, heavily dependent on the river for its very survival, fears the dam could significantly curtail its water supply. Ethiopia, on the other hand, asserts its right to utilize its natural resources for development, arguing that the GERD's impact will be minimal. This clash of perspectives has created a volatile situation, pushing Ethiopia and Egypt towards a precipice of uncertainty. The stakes are high, with the potential for regional instability and conflict looming large. The world watches with bated breath, hoping for a resolution that averts catastrophe and ensures the equitable sharing of the Nile's bounty. The Nile River is more than just a waterway for Egypt. It is the lifeblood of the nation. Flowing for over 4,000 miles, it is the country's primary source of fresh water, sustaining its agriculture, industry, and a population exceeding 100 million. Egypt's dependence on the Nile is absolute. The arid desert landscape leaves no room for alternative water sources, making the river synonymous with survival. The fertile Nile Valley, a narrow strip of green amidst vast stretches of sand, has been the cradle of Egyptian civilization for millennia. The prospect of the GERD disrupting this delicate balance is a matter of grave concern for Egypt. The dam's potential to reduce water flow, even temporarily, raises fears of widespread drought, crop failures, and economic devastation. Such a scenario could have catastrophic consequences for the country, threatening social stability and national security. This existential threat has propelled Egypt to adopt a firm stance on the GERD. The government views any compromise on the Nile's water flow as unacceptable, considering it a non-negotiable matter of national survival. While Egypt recognizes Ethiopia's right to development, it insists that this right should not come at the cost of its own existence. For Ethiopia, a landlocked nation striving for economic transformation, the GERD represents more than just a dam. It embodies a vision of a brighter future. The dam, a testament to Ethiopian ingenuity and determination, promises to unlock the country's vast hydroelectric potential. Ethiopia's ambitions for the GERD are multifaceted. First and foremost, the dam is envisioned as a solution to the country's chronic energy deficit. With a projected output of over 6,000 megawatts, the GERD has the potential to double Ethiopia's electricity generation capacity, bringing light to millions and fueling industrial growth. Beyond domestic consumption, Ethiopia sees the GERD as a lucrative opportunity for energy export. The sale of surplus electricity to neighboring countries could generate much-needed foreign currency, bolstering the national economy and lifting millions out of poverty. This potential for regional energy cooperation further strengthens Ethiopia's resolve to complete the dam. Ethiopia contends that its aspirations for development are not in conflict with the needs of downstream countries. It maintains that the GERD is designed to operate in a way that ensures a fair and equitable flow of water. Ethiopia argues that the dam's benefits extend beyond its borders, offering opportunities for regional cooperation and shared prosperity. The Nile River, despite its unifying presence, carries with it a legacy of colonial agreements that continue to cast a long shadow over the GERD dispute. These agreements, forged during the era of European dominance, granted Egypt and Sudan near absolute control over the Nile's water resources, largely sidelining upstream nations like Ethiopia. The 1929 Nile Waters Agreement, signed between Egypt and Great Britain, the colonial power in East Africa at the time, granted Egypt the lion's share of the Nile's flow and veto power over any upstream projects. This agreement, later reaffirmed in a 1959 treaty between Egypt and Sudan, solidified a water-sharing arrangement that heavily favored downstream countries. Ethiopia, however, was not a party to these agreements and has consistently rejected their legitimacy. It argues that the colonial-era treaties are inherently unfair and fail to recognize the needs and rights of upstream riparian states. Ethiopia maintains that it is not bound by agreements it did not sign and insists on a more equitable and inclusive approach to Nile water management. This historical context is crucial to understanding Ethiopia's current stance on the GERD. The dam, in many ways, represents a symbolic break from the colonial past and an assertion of Ethiopia's sovereignty over its natural resources. Ethiopia's determination to complete the dam, despite opposition from downstream countries, underscores its commitment to charting its own course and securing its water future. At the heart of the grand Ethiopian Renaissance dam dispute lies a ticking clock, the filling of the dam's colossal reservoir. This vast body of water, with a capacity to hold over 70 billion cubic meters, is essential for the dam's hydroelectric operation. However, the rate at which the reservoir is filled has become a point of contention, with significant implications for downstream water security. Ethiopia, eager to capitalize on its investment and begin generating electricity, favors a rapid filling schedule. This approach, while advantageous for Ethiopia's development goals, raises concerns for Egypt, which fears a sudden reduction in water flow during the filling period. Such a scenario could have dire consequences for Egypt's agriculture and water supply, potentially leading to economic hardship and social unrest. Egypt, on the other hand, advocates for a more gradual filling process, spread over a longer period. This approach, while mitigating the immediate impact on downstream water availability, would delay the GERD's full operation and prolong Ethiopia's wait for the dam's economic benefits. This difference in priorities has created a deadlock, with each side prioritizing its own needs and timelines. The filling of the GERD's reservoir is a delicate balancing act, requiring careful consideration of both upstream and downstream interests. Finding a compromise that addresses Ethiopia's development aspirations while safeguarding Egypt's water security is crucial to averting further escalation and ensuring the equitable sharing of the Nile's resources. Despite years of diplomatic efforts, a lasting solution to the GERD dispute remains elusive. Numerous rounds of negotiations involving Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan have failed to bridge the fundamental disagreements over the dam's filling and operation. The lack of progress has fueled anxieties and raised international concern over the potential for conflict. One of the main stumbling blocks in the negotiations has been the lack of a binding agreement on the GERD's operating rules. Ethiopia, asserting its sovereign right to manage its own resources, has resisted signing a legally binding treaty that could limit its future flexibility in operating the dam. Egypt, on the other hand, insists on a legally binding agreement that guarantees a minimum water flow and provides a mechanism for resolving disputes. The international community, recognizing the potential for the GERD dispute to destabilize the region, has made several attempts to mediate between the three countries. The African Union, the United Nations, and various countries have offered their good offices to facilitate dialogue and find a peaceful resolution. However, these efforts have yet to yield a breakthrough, with mistrust and competing interests hindering progress. The GERD dispute, far from being an isolated bilateral issue, has cast a long shadow over the already volatile Horn of Africa region. The escalating tensions between Ethiopia and Egypt have exacerbated existing regional rivalries, raising concerns about the potential for proxy conflicts and a broader conflagration. Egypt, feeling strategically vulnerable due to its heavy dependence on the Nile, has sought to strengthen its partnerships in the region, particularly with countries bordering Ethiopia. These efforts, seen by some as attempts to isolate Ethiopia diplomatically, have further heightened tensions and fueled mistrust. Ethiopia, for its part, views Egypt's regional maneuvering with suspicion, interpreting it as a strategy to undermine its interests and exert pressure on the GERD issue. This dynamic has created a climate of uncertainty and heightened the risk of miscalculation, with even minor incidents carrying the potential to escalate rapidly. The potential for the GERD dispute to spill over into open conflict is a grim prospect, but one that cannot be ignored. A war between Ethiopia and Egypt, both significant military powers in the region, would be catastrophic, resulting in immense human suffering and destabilizing the entire Horn of Africa. The international community must remain actively engaged, urging restraint and encouraging dialogue to prevent such a tragic outcome. The Nile River, a source of life and a symbol of shared heritage, should not become a catalyst for conflict. The GERD dispute, while highlighting the challenges of transboundary water management, also presents an opportunity for cooperation and a renewed commitment to shared stewardship of the Nile's precious resources. The path forward lies in recognizing the interconnectedness of the Nile basin and embracing a spirit of dialogue and compromise. Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan, as co-riparian states, must prioritize the peaceful resolution of their differences through good faith negotiations and a genuine commitment to finding mutually acceptable solutions. A sustainable and equitable agreement on the GERD must address the legitimate concerns of all parties involved. Ethiopia's right to development and its aspirations for economic growth must be balanced with Egypt's need for water security and its reliance on the Nile for its very survival. Such an agreement should encompass a transparent and cooperative approach to data sharing, joint management mechanisms, and a robust dispute resolution process. The international community has a crucial role to play in supporting this process. Technical expertise, financial assistance, and diplomatic pressure can all contribute to creating a conducive environment for dialogue and compromise. The stakes are too high and the potential consequences too grave to allow this dispute to fester and escalate. The Nile, a symbol of life and prosperity for millennia, must not become a source of conflict in the 21st century.